Okay, so this talk is about Destiny Focus. So it's an app I created. It's a Python and ReactJS powered app with a little bit of TypeScript in there as well. And it's a stat tracking tool for the game Destiny 2. And I know there's a couple of people in the house who play the game. I know at least one person here who plays with me, and I know another person who was credited with helping to create the game. So that's pretty cool. So without further ado, that's me. So I'm a full-time father, part-time engineer, and when I have a little bit of time in between all that, I like to do a bit of gaming as well, and Destiny is one of the games I like to play. So I've probably put in a lot of hours over the last few years. And I kind of mention that because I'm not a full-time web developer, so if any of this looks a bit hokey to you and you're a full-time web developer, well, you know, merge requests are always welcome, is what I would say. And this was my pandemic project, essentially. So while we were all kind of stuck in lockdown, I kind of came up with this idea to make this app. And over the last kind of year and a half, I've been working away on it. So if you don't know what Destiny, the game is, this is Destiny there. You can kind of see those kind of three cool characters there. So it's kind of got a couple of different things. Space magic, guns, and kind of aliens, and you're fighting and shooting and doing a lot of cool stuff. So it's a pretty cool and exciting game. It's a one with a lot of kind of production value gone into it as well, so it's what they call a kind of a AAA type game. You can see the three characters there. On the left, there's a hunter. On the right, there's a titan, and in the middle, then there's a warlock, and the warlocks are the best, essentially. And you can see they're all kind of superpowered with kind of solar kind of fire energy. So. Destiny 1 was created, was launched back in 2014, and it went on for about 4 or 5 years. Destiny 2 was launched in 2017, and kind of in that time, the player base kind of goes up and down a lot. Destiny 2 have done a really good job of releasing expansions, so there's an expansion pretty much every year, and every time there's an expansion, the player base kind of explodes up again. And then within those expansions, so within each yearly expansion, there'll be different seasons, and there's kind of more content released within those seasons. So more kind of stories, more kind of different kind of game modes released in those seasonal expansions. I did previously, about 3 or 4 years ago, kind of release a Destiny app. And one of the questions I got a lot was, why Destiny? Why don't you do it with X, Y, Z? The main reason I picked Destiny was because Bungie have an amazing API to interact with Destiny. And I'll kind of show you a couple of little kind of things on the next file. No other game has an API like Destiny. I did want to do something like this with Apex Legends or Call of Duty, but realistically, it's just not possible with the frameworks that they have. And this meme I saw a meme that was similar to this a couple of years ago, and it kind of really spoke to me. So kind of why Destiny Focus is like, well, I've been playing Destiny since it came out, and people will go, well, I guess you're good at it. And I'd make that kind of teary-eyed face as well. And so it says, so you're good at Crucible, and Crucible is the competitive player versus player aspect of it. So while I did put a lot of time and effort into the player versus player, I felt like I wasn't kind of getting the bang for my buck. I wasn't kind of improving, really. And again, the Bungie API. So the Bungie API allows you to do a lot of really fantastic stuff. So you can transfer items from one character to another on the fly. You can modify the items, so you can change the color of the items. You can change what modifications it has. So maybe this gun, you could add a modification to it that would give it faster reload speeds, for example. You can view post-game carnage reports. So that's basically about 30 seconds after you finish a game of, let's say, player versus player activity, or any kind of activity within Destiny, they release a post-game carnage report. And that post-game carnage report is basically a JSON response of like all the activity that every character within that activity has done. So let's say if you got 5 kills in that game with a particular weapon, all that would be logged in there. So it's really concise. There's a lot of cool stuff in there. You can do stuff like you can do stat tracking, which I'm going to show you a bit of. You can track which items you've collected and which items you need to catch for your collections. You can optimize your loadouts. And within the Bungie API, and probably what I should have mentioned first, that Bungie, if you don't know them, maybe you haven't heard of them, but Bungie obviously created Destiny, but they also created Halo as well. Or they're one of the main developers for Halo. Yeah, and one of the big things on Destiny, the Bungie API is the Destiny manifest. So the Destiny manifest is a separate kind of item you would request before you do kind of anything else. And it's pretty big. It's got like nearly 160,000 items in it. I checked it last night. There was nearly 160 items. and this is kind of an example of a JSON response for one of the items in there. So you can see like it has all of the kind of in-game assets. Like this gun is called the Ace of Spades, and it has like the in-game kind of picture of the gun, but it also has like a nice little icon. And Bungie kind of gives those to all of the developers, and we can kind of use them for however we want. So I did mention before that I had kind of done a previous kind of app on Destiny. So one of the first Flask projects I worked on, this is kind of it. So it was a server-side app. It wasn't very responsive. It wasn't very kind of fun to use, but it did a lot of cool stuff. So you can see now I've just clicked on it. I've transferred my helmet, and I'm going to equip my helmet on my character. So if I just click the next button, you can see me kind of clicking on the helmet there, and my character's helmet will change. I'm going to do some player versus player. So at the time, I was using a gun called Media Multi-Tool. So you can see a tap on Media Multi-Tool. That's transferred out of my vault to my character. And you can see I've equipped it on my back there. The weapon has just changed. And because I'm doing player versus player, I like to use a sword sometimes when I'm using player versus player. So you can see I'll click on the sword here, and that will transfer to my character. So, you know, the Bungie API, there's a huge amount of really cool stuff you can do with it. It only limits your imagination kind of thing. So I met that app about 3 or 4 years ago when I first got introduced to Flask. And then after that, I kind of thought, well, I've been using it for a while. I've been using Flask for a while. I've been doing some stuff with React for a while. So let's have another crack at making a Destiny app. So this is the famous bit of every presentation where it goes to crap, because I'm going to try and swap from the presentation mode to my actual web app. So if this doesn't work, I have some backup files, but let's see if we can get it working up on the big screen. Brave, brave man. Maybe I'll quit the presentation first. Okay. Okay, so let's get out of that first. That's spoiler alert. That's what the app looks like. So I kind of wanted this to be kind of a bit of a choose-your-own-adventure type thing. So there's different game modes within Destiny. So you can see on the top left there, you have all PvP, competitive PvP. The bottom left, then, those are 2 other different types of player versus player. They're competitive player versus player as well. And then on the right-hand side, there's kind of PvE. So there's, on the top right, the blue one is a raid activity. So that's you can join up with your friends every week. And I have a group of people I raid with every week. So there's 6 of us. And you know, sometimes it gets a bit competitive and a bit fun, and we always like to make fun of each other and try and kill each other. So we kind of we wreck each other's stats. So kind of what is Destiny focus? So we want to focus on a goal. So let's say if I'm focusing on player versus player here, I can set some goals for that. So I can kind of click on here and edit it. And for me, if I'm playing player versus player, I want to set a good kill-to-death ratio, which means I ultimately kill more people than I die to. So kind of a good kind of one for me is 1.2, so my kill-to-death ratio will be 1.2. I want to track how many precision kills I'm getting per game. So I don't want to be just kind of shooting everywhere and, you know, having a bit of fun. I want to be, you know, kind of targeting someone, hitting them with precision shots and kind of finishing them off and getting those kills. And other stuff then, like a good one as well is average time alive. So if you're playing a lot of competitive player versus player games and you find you're dying very quickly, well, that might be something you want to track and you want to try and improve on as well. So you can click back here, and kind of each one of these then would have kind of custom stats. So your competitive player versus player stats, you can track the same things, but they wouldn't necessarily be very relevant if you played a lot of raids. You didn't really play a lot of PvP. Well, then you can go in and play raids. You can track your raid stats there. So if you click on that then, so this is what it looks like. So you can see the top here we have the navigation bar. And the navigation bar is my currently logged in character, or my last played character. So I can see here, my last played character was a warlock. He had power level 1576. You can see down here, kind of ticking down, there's a little countdown timer. So essentially, the kind of the idea for this will be you'd leave the app up on either your phone or your laptop. You'd play Destiny, and then every kind of 20 or 30 seconds, your stats would update kind of in real time. There's some other stuff down here. So kind of this section in the middle, that's your progressions. So within the game itself, there are characters you can talk to in the game, and they'll say, you know, I want you to go and achieve some kind of goals in the player versus player or Crucible or whatever. And then you can rank up those characters. So you can see the kind of orange one there, there's 5 square boxes. What that means essentially is I'm on a win streak of 5 games. So my last 5 games, I've won them. And I'm 23% of the way to ranking up that faction, essentially. And you can see then just below that, my win-loss percent is 56.67%, and these kind of indicators here. And anyone who's very quick to notice might see that I'm on a 5-game win streak, but I've actually only won 4 of the 5 games. Bungie's kind of nice. That's a casual player versus player. They're kind of nice where they're a bit more forgiving on the casual stuff. They'll say, okay, well, we let that last loss go. Don't worry about it. Yeah, so you can see, so that's the kind of high-level view. So when a player loads in, they get to see those stats kind of real time. So you can see this season I haven't played any competitive player versus player over here in the top left, but that would be one of the things I'd be tracking, like, you know, how close am I to ranking up that faction. And then you can see down here, so on the left-hand side, we have like a nice little graph, and that kind of shows my kill to death ratio for the last few games. So you can see the left-hand side are the newer games, the right-hand side are the older games. So I had a brilliant game here where I got a kill to death ratio of 3.4. So I killed 17 people, I only died 5 times. And then kind of right after that, I had a real stinker where I only killed 6 people and I died 6 times. So, you know, ups and downs, swings and roundabouts. So you can see there's 2 lines on this graph here. So one of them is my focus goal. So I've set a target for myself at 1.2. I want my kill to death ratio to be 1.2. And my average right now is 1. It's exactly 1. So, you know, you always want your goal to be a bit better than your average because, you know, you need something to strive for. And what I kind of like to do for people as well is, this is kind of some stats, but they're kind of back of the envelope type stats. They're not very rigorous stats. So I set a focus target for that person. So for me, when I'm playing, my focus target will be to stay alive. So my focus is stay alive. And I do a bit of kind of back of the envelope type math here. So if I was to die 1 less time per game, my kill to death ratio will be 1.12. Whereas if I was more conservative, I'd get a better bang for my buck. Whereas if I was more aggressive, then my kill to death ratio would only go up and got 1 extra kill per game. My kill to death ratio would only go up 1.11. So it's not much there, but sometimes it's kind of a good tracker for people. It's a good indicator to say. For example, if I was using a sniper, I always tend to stand back a bit and kind of stay hidden. And normally what I find in that case is I'm not aggressive enough and I'm dying a lot. And my kill to death ratio is basically saying, or my focus goal is saying, you need to get out there and be a bit more aggressive and kind of score some more kills. So I have other kind of goals as well. I have kind of playstyle type goals or playstyle type indicators that I think kind of might be useful, or at least they're kind of useful for me as well. So we kind of said my average time alive. So you can see I set a goal of 90 seconds here, and I'm not actually hitting that in any of my games. I've kind of come close to it once, and I did really well in 1 game as well. So that's something I need to look at, actually. And I am dying a lot, so my average time alive is kind of suffering because of that. And my average precision shots, well, I actually set a goal of 10, and my average precision shots are 4.1. So I need to do a bit of work on that. And that's a kind of a tricky indicator as well. So some of the feedback I've got from the player base is, well, that doesn't apply to me because I don't use a precision weapon. And there's no kind of a hard and fast rule for that. So let's say one of the guns I use is called a sidearm. And it's a really fast firing small gun, and you go pew, 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 and you shoot everywhere. It's not exactly a precision weapon, so you're not going to be kind of tracking too closely to your precision kills. But you can see down here, like I have a nice little thing saying my accuracy is poor. So if I was working on my precision, then I need to do a bit of work on that. Only 31% of my kills are precision kills. So that's not good enough. I think and that bar kind of changes color. Once it gets above, I think 50-something%, it goes orange. And once it gets above 60, it goes green. And that's kind of ideally where you want to be, especially if you're in a competitive game, because you don't want to be kind of shooting wildly in a competitive game. You want to be kind of focused exactly on what you're looking at. We have some other kind of custom stats here. So like you can check your efficiency, for example. And efficiency is Bungie's in-game way of tracking your kill to death ratio. And this is kind of one of the reasons why I kind of created Destiny Focus. Bungie kind of hide a lot of the stats away because they want people to focus on their enjoyment of the game. So your efficiency, you can kind of think of it as like an inflated version of your kill to death ratio. But it can actually be hard to get in there and see, well, what was my actual kill to death ratio? And the last thing I'm going to show you then is this little chart here. So you can see, so this is my weapon data. So how I did with a particular weapon in that game. So you can kind of click on these and it'll change and show you. So okay, I used this gun for 1 game and I got 1 kill and it was a precision kill, so I didn't do very well with that. This is the sidearm I was talking about, where I did get a lot of kills. So my max kills is 9 kills in one game. I normally get about 3.7 kills in a game with this, but you can see it's divided between precision kills and body shot kills. I'm getting a lot of body shot kills with that, so it's not a very accurate weapon. And my favorite gun at the moment is called Trusty, so my Trusty scout rifle. And my max kills with that is 8, my average kills is 4, and you can see I'm doing a bit better on the precision. So my average precision games per game is nearly 2, so I probably need to do a bit better with that. That is a precision weapon, and I do need to be kind of scoring precision kills with that. So let me just see, what else was I going to talk about? Yeah, actually, so while I'm here, I'll show you a couple of other things. So that's the kind of, when someone goes in and they want to focus on their stats or whatever, that's kind of what to look at. There's also a couple of other features in here. So we can see, actually, if I go down here and show you, I found a little bit of a bug in this. I probably shouldn't show you this now, but this one, so 3.4. I really like this. I thought I did pretty well in that game. So when I click on it here, you can see I liked this game. So essentially what I did was I stored a link to this game in my account. So now whenever I come back, I can come back and say, oh, that was actually one of my favorite games. I did really well there. And on the right-hand side here, I've created a shareable link. So there's authentication in this, but one of the things I really wanted to do with Destiny Focus was have it be kind of a bit more social. Have it so you can share links with people and say, hey, did you see that game I played last night? I did really well in that. And this is kind of what one of the shareable games looks like here. So you can see that's me here. And if I click on my name here, you can see for this game, I used my Trusty scout rifle and Peace Bond, and I got 7 kills and 3 kills. And for this one here, actually, I used my superpowers, and I got 3 kills with my superpowers as well. And you can see some of the other people here. You can see, let's look at someone who did well on the other team. He got 13 kills. You can see he used an exotic sidearm called Forerunner, and he used an auto rifle and a linear fusion rifle. So he did well as well. Anyway, so that's one of the things. If I have a bit of time at the end, I might show you how I kind of store those in a database. But let's go up here and look at all my favorite games. So that's my focus, and if I go to all my likes, I can see this is a list of all of the games that I really liked, and I kind of stored them. So these now are stored in my SQL database. And then I can go back and click on these. I think actually this game was about a year ago. So, and I played with some of my friends. So I can say that this is another game that was a year ago. This one was 4 days ago. So that's, and each one of these creates a shareable link. So you can kind of send those on to your friends and see if they remember those games. And oh, actually, yeah, there's one last thing I'll show you before I get off. Destiny is kind of a bit of a social game, so you have a clan, which is a list of people who you play with. So what this is showing me here is, this is my clan. These are all the people I play with. You can see this is kind of real-time stats. So one of these guys was playing 41 minutes ago. One of the guys played 2 hours ago, 12 hours ago, 16 hours ago. It was me, I played 3 days ago. And you can see, I can click on my account and I can get a list of my active characters. And then I can view kind of their focus goals. So if I click on any of my friends, I can see all of their stats. I won't go doing that now. And just to give you a look at these. So what I'm going to show next is kind of how I populate these. So how I make an API request to Bungie, get the data, and then populate that kind of that type of a div there with, it's kind of a clickable div that will take me to my account with React and TypeScript. So, and there's some other features there like player search as well, but I'm not going to go into that. Okay. So I'll kind of skip through that, but anyway, I kind of give a quick overview of kind of what I showed. So we have different kind of game modes. So you have player versus player, you have casual, competitive. You have PvE, which is, you can have a raid with 6 people, so you get together with 6 of your friends and you play a raid. And it could be like a 2-hour activity, so it's a bit of fun. You can have a mix of the both of them actually, which is a PvPvE, so player versus enemy, and that's called Gambit. So you can see the 2 snakes up there in the top right. And this is again how we set our focus goals. We looked at that. Yeah, so kind of what's going on in the background here. So there's a lot of kind of fancy stuff going on here. About 80% of what you've seen is kind of CSS. But let's have a look. So we can see the nav bar up there. So the nav bar is, that's kind of set account-wide. So when you log in, the nav bar is set. And that sends a response to Destiny to get your profile information and your current character information. So this character that's logged in here with the kind of horse emblem, that's my currently logged in character. You can see the game mode here is player versus player. You can see the background then, we have we have a countdown timer, so that will refresh the data every 20 seconds. So if you're playing the game, it only takes about 5 seconds for Bungie to publish the post-game carnage reports, so it's pretty good in that respect. These are your progressions. Again, it's another API request, so I do an API request to get progressions, my win-loss percent, and my win-loss indicators. Those are again, I think they're tied to the API request above. And kind of a good thing to know that I didn't show earlier is some feedback I had from people online was, you can see on the bottom there, I'm not sure if people can read that, but that's you can view your historical stats. So typically I show for the last 30 games because I think the feedback I give people, I want it to be in real time. I want them to say, well, how am I doing today and how did I do this week? But you can actually change that. You can look at it for the last 50, 100, 250 games. And these indicators will change. So I try to show only the last 30 indicators because when I changed that to 250 and pushed it to production, I didn't realize that indicator is built on the number of games there. So the kind of display went kind of all out that way when it was trying to display the results of your 250 games. Okay, and custom goals we looked at, that's kind of showing your weapon stats. So I kind of kept that in there just in case the internet wasn't working here or anything else. So before I get into kind of how I did it, let's just talk about the app structure. And the app structure, so it's the Python app structure, it's a Flask app. There's a lot of different kind of competition out there. You can have Flask, Django, there's people who are going to talk to you about Fast API. My anecdotal evidence is anyone who's tried Django first sticks with Django. Anyone who's tried Flask first sticks with Flask. Anyone who's tried Fast API first will stick with that. There are definite areas within the Flask app that I could speed up or make kind of more efficient. I don't think moving to something like Fast API would help. I think probably refactoring the code, I'd probably get kind of more of a bang for my buck in that respect. For this I used a library I found on GitHub called Cookie Cutter Flask, and I have to say it did exactly what it said on the tin. You download Cookie Cutter Flask, you give it your app name, and it creates kind of a template Flask structure, and it did it pretty well. The only thing I had to kind of mess around with that respect was how to plug in the front end, so how to plug in the React and the Webpack, all that kind of stuff, that fun stuff. That was a bit kind of painful from that side of things, but from the Flask side of things, I would recommend Cookie Cutter Flask. I use a Postgres SQL database, and then blueprints. So for the blueprints then, I kind of, I separate the app into two kind of points. So yeah, I have an authorized and unauthorized view. So if you're logged in, you're not logged in. I created 3 kind of packages from this. So I have the Destiny Focus app, the authorization, you can download that, and how to download the manifest. And then for the React structure, it's a custom structure. I don't use create React app. I use TypeScript, Webpack, and React Router. I have Redux in there to save some state information from people, and victory charts to create the charts. And I had some help from some open source projects there as well. Some of them create some of the icons, and some of them create some of the TypeScript stuff. So adding React to Flask is pretty easy. It's a one-line kind of addition. You add it to your bottom. That's viewing the source for your HTML. When you render a React component, you add an empty div in there, and React will kind of overwrite that component with whatever you return, overwrite that div with whatever component you've returned. So you can see in the bottom, React dom.render. So I'm rendering my footer component, and I'm replacing everything that's in the footer div. And let's see, making auth API requests. Okay, so how do I make an API request? So React sends a request to the Destiny Focus servers. So let's say if you go to whatever page, or you just log in, you want to get your account information. First of all, you send a request to the Destiny Focus servers. Destiny Focus creates an authorized request session with that. So we send a response to Bungie, or we send a request to Bungie. Bungie sends the JSON response back to us. I have to do a bit of parsing with that data. I have to do a manifest lookup. So let's say, for example, there's a gun that I've used. If I want to get all the images, all the name and the description of the gun, well, then I have to look it up from my database. And then I send that JSON back to React. I'm just going to check, what am I like for time there, Stefan?
0 minutes.
It's not a 35-minute talk?
For the question. But you can continue.
Yeah, okay. I think of 10 minutes.
We can.
Okay, okay. I won't argue too much. Stefan's a big guy. Okay, so how do I make an unauthorized API request? It's much easier. I can essentially cut out the middleman in a lot of this stage. So the React app or the user sends the request directly to Bungie, and Bungie sends it directly back to the user or the React app. So it's much snappier. I can see from a lot of those things when I kind of bypass my server, it's much snappier. And then it gives the user kind of a better user interface. And what I do when I need to use my server then is the user interacts with the application somehow. So you can see when I clicked on my username and I wanted to find out what weapons I was using. In the background then I can do an asynchronous request from React to my Destiny focus servers. I can do a lookup for that weapon and kind of query kind of what was the image of that weapon, what was the name of it, and send it back to the user. And that happens I have to say that's kind of quite snappy, and it happens very well in the background. And for any of these things where I think it's a bit sluggish, I've tried to put in animations that will kind of trick the user into thinking it's not, the app isn't frozen, we're actually doing something. Okay, so yeah. I think for the next stage what I'm going to do is, I think I have about 5 minutes left, so if Stefan doesn't tackle me, let's see how I get on. So I'm going to show you how I would kind of populate these. This is a React component, and how I would populate that with information from the Bungie servers. So there's kind of 4 items here. So you can see on the very top one, that's my navigation bar, and then I have 3 kind of items, 3 divs for each character. And clicking on each one of those will bring me to the relevant character, and then we'll log in that character up in the navigation bar. And kind of what it's kind of hard to see with there is, that's exactly the same component. It's just repeated 3 times with the information changed inside. And it's slightly different in the top one. Like for example, the background in the top one, it's kind of using a bigger background, and it has a kind of nicer high quality icon with some kind of transparent stuff in there. That Bungie provide all that. And so let's look at how I do it. So to get the user's profile information, first of all, Flask has to make an API request to Bungie. And this is a bit of an eye chart here, so I don't expect you to read every line of code. So what happens here? So with this API request, there's a lot of different parameters I can send on that. So one of the parameters here for the get profile one I want to do is, you can see it in the doc string there, is number 100 profiles and number 200 characters. So I want to send that additional parameter with the get profile request, just to say this is the information that I want. I create an authenticated request session. So inside my class here, I return self.makeSessions as an authorized session. So I take the user's credentials and add them to a request session object. And from there on, I can use that to make authorized requests. Yeah, so there's just a bit of kind of string manipulation here. So this is kind of a generic string parameter, and then I'd swap in the user's, so the membership type would be the platform they're on, so either PC or PlayStation or whatever, Xbox. And then the user's account number then, so that's the Destiny membership ID. I send the request, and then I receive the response. And when I receive the response, then obviously I want to check for errors and set an error flag. And if not, then I'll return a JSON response. But before I return that to the user, I have to do a bit of kind of JSON parsing. So you can see, here's an example. So first of all, the user may have 1 character, they may have 3 characters, they may have 2 characters, they may have had 3 characters and deleted 1 character. So I need to find out kind of how many characters they actually do have, and what is the identification for each of those characters. And that kind of tricks me up a few times, because you don't want to hard code stuff like that. The next one then is pull data from the Destiny database, so the manifest database. So I'm making a request to my database, and you can see here, so get definition, and the definition name is the Destiny class definition. So that's, for example, if the character was a warlock, if he was a hunter, you want to kind of know, that will return a string saying this guy is a warlock, and we use that later on. And then populate a dict with relevant character information. So you can see the character information is the user's display name, their unique display name, their membership type, which is PlayStation, Xbox, whatever, their character ID. So we populate that, we'd send all that back to the user, and we'd return the response. So that's the JSON response where we requested the data. We've received the response from Bungie. We've parsed it so it's in kind of a usable format, and now we'll populate our React component with that. So you can see this is it's a React component. It's a TypeScript component. So you can see up the top, it's well, you can't really see it, but it's a TSX file. So one of the things with a TypeScript file is, or TypeScript component is, you have types for each of the data types you receive. And in this case, I have an interface defined there. So let's say if I send back the character ID could be a string, but in some cases it could be used as an integer. So you need to know, well, am I using it as a string or an integer? Is it a Boolean? Kind of whatever. And that's one of the good features of TypeScript. It's strictly typed. You can see here I import some functions to select different icons. So you can see down at the bottom here I have the PlayStation logo, and I have it kind of looks like an M. There's a bunch of triangles stuck together. So the PlayStation logo is obviously for the user's platform. The kind of triangular logo is for the triangular logo then is for the class. So it's a Warlock class. It's all wrapped in a router link, a React router link. So by clicking on it, it'll take you to the relevant view for that character. And then you can see there where you select the class item. So class icon equals, and I set it, so you can see there class name equals Destiny class. That's the equivalent of calling a function in Python, but I'm calling a React component. So I think Shine, that's it. And all that will return the code that's used to populate that div. And that's kind of reusable code, and I'd use that a lot for any kind of time I'm identifying a character. So I think that's me. I think I'm out of time. I'm getting the nod here. So thanks very much. There's my socials if you want to get in touch with me. There's the app, so Destiny Focus Me, or else you can see it all on GitHub. It's all open source. And if you have any kind of ideas, you can log an issue. You can merge requests. They're very welcome. And yeah, thanks for coming to the talk, and thanks for coming to Python and ReactJS. Time for questions?
Yes, thank you for your talk. Do you have any question to Allyn about the development of his structure? Oh, yes, great.
Hey, Alan, how's things? Thanks for the talk. Brilliant. Great to see Destiny up there. Did you come into any rate limiting issues as your user base went up because they're all using your API keys?
No. And I have heard of that. Bungie do rate limit their servers. I think I was a bit cheeky with setting my refresh rate to 20 seconds. Yeah, there's a lot of people nodding. But I knew that I had kind of a lower player count. So as the player base was going up, I was getting about kind of 200, 300 people per day. Between that, I was getting kind of a lot less. And I knew from talking to some of the other developers, like the people who do trials report and stuff like that, they're making dozens of requests per second. So I knew I wasn't coming anywhere next to near those. I think Bungie have a limit of, if you're making more than 1,000 requests a minute, then you need to get in contact with them, basically. So, yeah.
Sorry, yeah, two quick questions. Did you use SQL Alchemy in your Flask app? And where did you deploy it in the end, your thing?
I did use SQL Alchemy, yeah, and I have to say SQL Alchemy is fantastic. I love it. I kind of run out of time here, but I have some kind of slides further on with how I populate the likes into the SQL Alchemy database. And how I deployed it, I ended up deploying it on a VPS, so just a kind of bare server. And I'd done that a few times before. I did try and have a look into Docker and a few other things, and I just said, look, I'm spending a week looking at Docker when I've done this about 5 or 6 times already, so let's just get this out.
Cool, thank you.
Any other questions?
No. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much, everyone. Appreciate it.